this session, the first of I believe, of a few different panel sessions we'll be doing here at PDF Days. Driving interoperability, broadening support for full-function PDF. I'm going to show you just a couple of slides up front to set up the subject, and then we're going to turn it over to our panelists, who are going to give you their perspective on interoperability and the process of driving this fundamental value, this fundamental need, as it were, of the PDF, of PDF technology and of document communications in general forward. So what is interoperability? Why is it important to PDF? And some problems, the two ideas of PDF that may be relevant to this, and then making a PDF attractive beyond that. Interoperability, fancy word in English. Couldn't tell you what it is in German. Don't try me. The ability of computer systems or software to exchange and make use of information is a generally accepted English translation of this term. The ability to share might be how those of us of the less technical persuasion understand it. Why is interoperability so critical specifically in the PDF space? Because it lets consumers of PDF not have to think about the medium, because that document looks the same here as it did there, because the results are predictable, because it just works. It's easy. It's independent, very importantly, of the software manufacturer or of the software version. When you achieve those sorts of things, you're achieving interoperability, and you are smoothing the process of business and of communications in general. ISO standards, what role do they have? Well, interoperability is not for everything and for every situation for everyone. There's plenty of scope for private cases in the use of in PDF technologies, as there are in everywhere else. No problem with that. But the use of ISO standardized PDF technology demonstrates a respect for the idea that when one intends workflows that have to do with sharing content with other organizations that need to consume this stuff, or other people, or with history, perhaps with an archive, that more and better interoperability is always a good and a better thing. So how then, and by good and better, because I'm speaking by and large here in context of a PDF industry meeting, I mean, how is it good for this file format and for those users of it, all several billion of them worldwide, and for the future of electronic documents in general. So a couple of examples of interoperability problems, just to set the stage here. And I will mention no names, of course. Everybody can probably guess some of these offenders. These are real examples in the real world right now. Some of them belong to software companies, very large software companies, very wealthy software companies that could do better if they chose to. Missing report support for a given feature. Okay, that can be a case where where interoperability is lost. There's no requirement in the PDF specification you have to support all features in PDF, but there is an implicit understanding in 1.7 and an explicit understanding in PDF 2.0 that if you do support a feature, you must support it completely. An application might allow users to add a comment, but then is ignorant of, or the developers are unwilling to implement PDF's annotations model, and the content becomes masking page content. In other words, that comment is dropped in as an image on top of that existing PDF page. That would be an interoperability fail. You might ignore certain features in a PDF when opening it and displaying it. That's okay, you didn't need to support them, as I mentioned. But then if you go ahead and allow the user to save that PDF file out, and you destroy those features on the way out, you threw out those tags, that digital signature, you're being very, very bad. So the page description model versus full function. In basic rendering, there's a whole world of interoperability concerns there, as some of which are brought up in the last session. I won't go over them now. There are some additional nice to haves, outlines and links and so on. But then there's full function PDF, which includes a whole lot of other fun stuff. There's a lot of scope for the interoperability question. There are many different ways in which we can work on PDF interoperability to enhance PDF's attractiveness to third parties. That is to say, developers who do not think of themselves as PDF developers, but would benefit if they did, or at least be willing to think of it in a little bit, or willing to introduce some PDF technologies into their workflow, and generally increase the job of making the planet knee-deep in PDF. And that's good for everybody in the PDF space, and quite frankly for the users who need that stable electronic document. So let's move on to our panelists here and hear what they have to say on how to drive interoperability forward. We have here, and they are not lined up according to in their seats according to the chart. So you have to do the mapping yourself.
So no interoperability
between
us and the slide?
It was not validated prior to your seated placement, I'm afraid. So I really would prefer to mostly turn it over to them, and I'll put up a slide with a few pictures on the screen. But these are 4 experts in the technology. They've all had deep experience in not only in PDF, but in the very specific questions of how to promote and how to extend interoperability between diverse systems. So without further ado, we're going to move on to this panel. And let's throw some quick questions up here. Other questions are very welcome from you all. Here are a few that might be useful to help start you off, and perhaps a few that one or two this panel might choose to engage with. But again, this is a panel session. It's largely for me to stop talking right about now, and for this panel to discuss what they feel is critical about interoperability, address the questions they wish to, and then please, I hope we hear from you with some of your own questions. Thank you. So why don't we start with Matt? You're holding the mic. That was brave of you.
Thank you, Duff.
Why don't you start right off?
Right. Can everyone hear me okay? So I'm Matt Kuznicki. I am the Chief Product Officer at Datalogix. I am the Chairman of the PDF Association. And for the purposes of this panel discussion, I am speaking for myself and myself alone. These are my opinions. These may or may not be the opinions of my employer or the PDF Association or anybody I've known or have ever known. So when we talk about PDF interoperability, we want to be very careful. So interoperability is a concept that is enabled by PDF as a portable document format. But interoperability is really a characteristic not of files, but of the ecosystem that handles these files. So PDF having broad ecosystem support, we have to ask ourselves, what do the participants in this ecosystem gain from interoperability? Now, we are, I think by and large, convinced that the answer is, if not intuitive, at least readily apparent, that we gain the ability to work together as an ecosystem and use PDFs in different applications, in different workflows, with different people across different programs, different platforms, across space and across time. I think we're all convinced in at least some manner that this is a good thing. Where we see, in my opinion, interoperability concerns come from is that to a lot of software vendors, this is not an intuitive value proposition. In fact, there is much more of a business value proposition to many software vendors of providing an optimal experience if you stay within the confines of their environment. Everything will work out if you just use our programs, our equipment, if you stay with our concepts and just join us. Stay with us and your life will be good. This is where interoperability problems come from. We as a community, the best thing I believe we can do to drive interoperability is to drive the dismantling of the value proposition of being one of us, and to promote the value proposition as ecosystem participants, that the real value comes from being in all of us.
Okay. Yeah, it's great to hear all this. And yeah, I'm Boris Dobrov from Dolab, and we've been developing VR PDF for many years, and we know interoperability issues from PDF-A specifications, and we've spent some time to resolve many, many issues in this domain. I would say that interoperability of a file format is certainly a thing more generic than just interoperability of PDF documents. And Matt already explained the business value of this notion, why we would want to have this, because this value of our products will be higher if we do things correctly. But I'll rather concentrate on how I see this can be achieved. And yeah, it can be summarized, I think, in just 3 words. It should be a structured community effort to achieve this. And all these 3 words actually have a specific meaning. So effort means there should be people who care about this and who spend time on doing quite a lot of work. So interoperability of PDF doesn't come out for free. So it's actually on the cost of many, many people and companies who, invested a lot of money into this subject. Community, it's clear we want to have an open ecosystem, so there should be, so it's not an opinion of a single person, but an opinion of community, many people around. And structure is probably the most complex thing here. So how to structure this effort? And there are several levels here. Of course, like ISO-based specifications is a great thing here. So ISO does great work to structure already the development of such specifications, also, although on the expense of a quite lengthy and delicate process. Also, PDF association, that's one of the places where a lot of technical expertise is exchanged, and that's another level of, structured level of community effort. And of course, one of the key questions is how to make this effort be accessible to the rest of the world. And again, PDF Association does a great job here by doing some technical publications and doing opening resources to everybody, not just members of PDF Association. Well, maybe there is more to be done in this area in the future, but we'll see.
Thank you, Boris. So yeah, let me introduce myself. My name is Roman Toda. I'm software developer, and with my team we are working for many years on building systems, PDF features for our partners, vendors. We've built several PDF renders. We are working on things like 3D PDF for vendors, validation, things like that. So when we will be talking about bad habits, bad tools, that's us who you should blame, in fact. And I take all the responsibility here, and I do think that I only have a couple of messages when it comes to interoperability for every adopter of PDF. First is expect problems. You know, if you are doing these things, something will go wrong, and it eventually will, because that's the nature of our world, of the PDF itself, and also of the tools we developing. I don't think there is a company in the world that does have or who provides a tool for processing or creating a PDF that does have an empty list of bugs. No one, right? So we are trying to do our best, obviously, but the tools are not perfect at the moment. They won't be at any stage, but we're getting there. So another advice, don't take shortcuts when it comes to PDF. Just use the language that is in PDF. PDF spec is clear. So we will, at some point, fix our tools. They will be better, but PDFs with those shortcuts will last forever, which is something what I think is worse scenario than to experience some discomfort for a while. You know how quickly applications on mobiles are, updating. So yeah, don't take shortcuts. And then it's been said from Matt and Boris as well, it's a community effort. So you guys have to actually push on us, on the vendors, on everybody in this room to get things right. We should stop not saying or hiding the names of those who are providing bad experience with our open standard. So again, expect problems, acquire knowledge, and don't take shortcuts. That is as easy as it is.
Okay. So I was waiting what was left for me. So let's find out that. Yeah, I think what I learned also during these days. So I think interoperability is kind of one of the major blocks that is inside of PDF. Of the PDF format. So it all started with making different operating systems become able to work with the same files. And that is all about PDF. And I think interoperability, it's really a difficult word. So in Germany, I think I was thinking about what is the right word for that in German. I think the right word actually is standard in German. So standardization. And that maybe also brings me to what I want to say here. You also said that beforehand. So I mean, PDF, the rendering, the interoperable rendering of PDF, I think that is what the whole PDF journey has started with. But I think we are now, and that kind of has been achieved. I mean, still, as Roman said, so you will always have problems when it comes to software and interoperability. But in that area, I think we are pretty much there. But then we don't have to stop there. And that is when all these PDF-based ISO standards have been invented and are still evolving. And all of these address different industries and different issues that go beyond just the rendering of a PDF file. You have additional information that is for printing devices and cutting devices, and when it comes to accessibility, so really not just the rendering of the page, but having access to the content in a PDF file in an interoperable way. And that is where we stand today. So making this happen, just not the rendering, but I don't know, the right way to add additional features to a PDF file, to add tagging in the right way to a PDF file so that it works in an interoperable way. And also what I said this morning, add structured information to a PDF file, adding XML structures and so forth, structured data into a PDF file in a standardized way that allows you to access this data with various systems in an interoperable way. So finally I learned to speak that word loud, so that's my part here.
Actually, somehow it doesn't get a lot easier with practice.
Are there tools which you can use to parse the before and after situation of a operation? So you have a PDF, and part of what you said is once you've done something to it, like adding tags, all of a sudden you miss features in the resulting PDF? Are there tools that can compare on that level and say, okay, this has been added and this is now left out?
So you mean like a PDF diff? So
Or parser or another matter?
I mean, there are analysis tool like the pre-flight tool in Acrobat or so where you can basically analyze a PDF file. But I'm not aware of a tool that would say you on a high level, on a feature level, this PDF has this and this feature. Of course, you can find out in Acrobat whether there is a tagging structure, and you can find out whether there is an embedded file or so whatever. But I'm not aware of a tool that would give you such a high-level overview. Do you?
That's actually a very hard one, comparing and diffing PDFs. We have the problem of, so in our regression tests, we produce a very large number of PDFs across many different situations, so different computers, different environments, and different people. And we have this set of PDFs and want to compare it with another set of PDF. And of course, there are obvious differences. The question was how to identify on a high level the differences. But let's start with trying to find out whether they are actually equivalent. We have a different modification and creation date, it's obvious. So you have to ignore little pieces in the PDF. So it goes on, you ignore this, and it moves on to the XMP metadata. You have again some data and some producer entry and maybe the platform name and other stuff. It continues with the numbering of objects. You may want to ignore it or maybe not. And the more you look into details up to, let's say, digital signature or other stuff, the more differences you will find. And for each difference, you have to decide whether it's relevant for your particular purpose of comparison or not. So in the end, I think it boils down to the fact that given some specific application area where you want to compare, you can handcraft such an application which does it. But in a general case, you won't be able to find a generic application which, like text diffing. So this is generic. You do the difference, and then you can judge the differences. But not so for PDFs. It's just too complex for simple comparison methods.
Exactly. The definition of what is the same and what are differences is still going to be situationally specific. Are two PDFs where the objects have all been renumbered the same or different? Well, this depends on your application. If I am digitally signing a PDF, these may or may not be equivalent. If I am a text-to-speech application, if that's the only quote-unquote change, then these are probably equivalent for my application. So to the previous question of are there tools that can detect that, okay, words were added, some words were deleted, and changes like that. So, you know, for humans are these different? There are a couple tools out there. DocsCore, I believe, is one vendor that has such tools. But is that going...
I'm talking about the content. I'm talking about features. Yeah.
Right. But is that going to get to, are these expressed in the same features? I'm not familiar with any such tool.
I think the only thing that I would be aware of is, again, ISO standards. So, of course, if you have an indication that is PDF UA, that is PDF A, that would include a number of features. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's a good idea. There are a couple of PDF vendors in the room, so...
Well, if there are new colors tool coming up.
Sorry.
The other question is, you're hitting it on the nail. You have either a PDF A or a PDF UA. But what about a UA which is A?
No problem.
Just
No problem.
That's not
That's not an issue actually, but I would touch your previous question or previous comment. I think it's the nature of PDF itself that operations that are not part of the specification itself. So nobody tells you how to do proper merging or splitting or text editing or whatever. So you usually break anything in a PDF when doing these sort of operations. On a, even from a development point of view, if we are going to merge two files, we'll probably break linearization, for example. And it's hard to actually replicate the same behavior from the first one. If we are merging, what would you do with bookmarks? You know, you have to merge it somehow. So you have to change the destinations. So you won't get the same thing you can't really compare that because the destination has changed. But is it pointing to the right page? That's the question, right? With the text editing, you might not have even informations. If you are doing text editing, you're just trying to change something, you might not have the glyph, the correct glyph, because font might be embedded, but subsetted. So you don't have the glyph you wanted to use, you have to use different font. Is it same? Is it good? Is it bad? We don't have these directions in PDF spec. PDF spec just mandates whatever is in a format. How to describe properly, you know, the content on the page. But what operations you would do and how that should work, that's not part of the spec. Everybody, every developer develops their own best practices and things. Of course, we're doing our shortcuts because our product managers want us to deliver quickly. So that's the reality.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention that diff is one thing, but the other thing is just checking that your document is still valid. And this is kind of a shame that there is no standard tool to check the current or latest versions of, well, any version of PDF specification. We have PDFA pilot, PDF toolbox and some other checkers for PDF subsets, like PDFA, PDFX, but not for PDF itself. There are attempts, of course, to cover this gap. But so far, what we've seen in very PDF development and in the feedback from memory institutions, they desperately need something that checks at least the low-level syntax of PDF documents and makes sure that at least on this level, everything is fine. And so far as I know, there is no, at least open tools that would do that. And that's probably the very first need we would need to address here.
Yeah, I think that is really a valid point. I mean, there is transparency flattening. We had that in the previous session, and then you would get rid of all tagging structure. So maybe it's still there, but it's not valid anymore. And I think that is something that I would take away from this session is that what we do with a PDF file, I mean, it's obvious that transparency flattening can take place with keeping the tagging structure valid, but then there should be an indication about that the tagging structure or something like that. So maybe we have to think more. So far, PDF has worked to be interoperable for rendering, but when we want to make it to become more value into that, then we have to be more careful when we do operations on the PDF file. So that is something that I can really take with me. So did I for us as a PDF association. I learned that in one of the previous sessions. We should more explain how it is possible to combine PDF-based ISO standards. So what do you have to think about when it comes to creating PDF UA that is at the same time compliant to PDFA?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to add, in your presentation of your toolkit, you said that you support the PDF3 as a container concept, so you can click on files that you would want to import. If you think of that further, and you think from an archival perspective, you put that in an archive, think of an email that is printed, but then all the email relevant files are added to it as well, the attachment and stuff. So you add something which is today's technology, maybe, what's the name of the Microsoft
MSG?
MSG files, right. So I can think of a crawler which reminds me every year, oh, wait a minute, this is now not supported anymore. You should watch out because this is this will not be interoperable next release of Windows or something like that, you know. So there will be a new environment of tools which are going to warn you about, hey, you added this file and this is not valid anymore. So it's sort of watch it off. And what do you do then? You take it out of the archive, you replace it with the new technology, because the email you still want to have, but you probably make a new.
Well, these are policy questions, right? You know, do we update the software? It's not a PDF issue per se. What the PDF can contribute in this context
Absolutely.
is a rendering. And I mention this because PDF package is an idea that encapsulates the idea you're talking about. A rendering to begin with that actually really does last, followed with the electronic source files, such as they may be, and they may turn into garbage in 10 years' time. That's understood in a sense, or at least that's at the risk of the policymaker who's managing that archive, because we can't look into the future and say and know what that technology is going to be. But I believe I also saw a question up here. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on something I've been hearing. I'm sitting with my back to most of you, so I'll shout. But question to the panel, picking up on something I've been hearing resonating a lot here, which is stick to the standards and you'll solve a lot of problems. I also heard it from you, basically. But the problem we see in Dutch government is that about 95% of the hundreds of thousands of PDFs that are out there on government websites are not standard PDF files. They're PDF 1.3s, 1.4s, which are not PDF A, 1.5s, 1.6s, but there's less than 5% 1.7s and let alone PDF A's out there. And most of what's coming out of Office applications, I'm not only talking about Microsoft Office, it's mostly that, but actually still isn't standard PDF. So how do we, that's a question to you guys as well, how do we break that, if you talk about the ecosystem, how do you break that vicious circle?
Can I answer that? A fact that a PDF file is not a PDF A file, or PDF X file, or PDF UA file, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad or can't be rendered or won't be available in the future PDF file. It means that effectively that certain rules were used and hopefully tested against to ascertain that the best practices that are in that standard are being observed for that particular file. There are large numbers of, I have PDF files from PDF 1.0 that are perfectly fine, work perfectly well with today's renders, and will work perfectly fine into the indefinite future. I also know PDF A files that are produced by junk that if you do pre-flight on them, you're going to find problems. So it's not so much whether they are PDF A files as much as, or PDF X files, as much as whether what is producing the file and the options you use for producing those files are appropriate for long-term compatibility. Let me just add one other thing, because this issue came up about, what people do and stuff. And I'll sort of, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm also an Adobe employee. One of the things that I think we found, and I sort of have as my particular theme, is you can't eat your children. What does that mean? You try doing things with PDF. PDF allows you to really strangle yourself by putting in added value, this, that, whatever. For example, you could put in data into a PDF file by using various types of metadata and private extensions and stuff. But even though that has functionality, what happens in the future if you don't continue the ability to get at that private stuff? As opposed to, let's say, putting data in as a file, which is something that is pretty well defined. I tend to look at, if you're going to do something in PDF, do something that is likely to be sustainable into the future. And we've learned that. You can talk about XFA forms, you can talk about portfolios, all sorts of things that sounded good at the time, but ultimately were not sustainable.
And they weren't particularly standardized either. And this is a large
that's
part of
the
the
point.
discussion. Right, exactly.
To answer this from a little different angle, I would suggest you to actually, everything comes from understanding. Like you're saying, there are a bunch of files and they might or might not be good or bad. So first of all, you should understand what's bad with them. You know, to achieve that, to do that, you have to have certain knowledge, certain set of tools. Pre-flight, very good one, for example. So the understanding of where the problem is actually will help you to solve a lot, you know, because then you might stop accepting PDF from specific vendors. You know, you might decide that you will actually recreate those files based on recent standards. Could be very easy from, I don't know, 1.4 file into a PDFA. So again, take the knowledge somehow, achieve and use the right tool set to get the understanding of your current state.
And I think it also depends on what your audience is for interoperability. So the more broadly that you want your files to be interoperable, I think it's incumbent on you to represent concepts more simply and more compatibly. So I think we can take an analog from human languages, where the more broadly I want a spoken or a written piece of work to be understandable, the simpler the language I use, the simpler the constructs I use, the simpler the sentences, the simpler I put them together. I think we can extend this concept to PDF more generally, and I believe we as an industry may do somewhat of a disservice when we ask everybody, why don't your tools handle everything? When really we may want to ask ourselves as an industry, why do we feel the need to speak in such complicated PDFs? If we want broad compatibility, is it the responsibility of everybody to understand every word in every dictionary, or is it the responsibility of the speaker to speak simply and understandably?
Well, I would like also to comment on the problem I mentioned. Well, I see clearly that, well, in answer, there are good PDFs here, and if it's not PDF 1.7, it might still be good enough, is not really a sufficient answer for, well, there are many risks. And, well, PDF-A, of course, handles most of these risks for long-term preservation, but might be too hard to achieve in many cases. Yet saying, well, if it's just a good PDF file, how do you know that it's a good PDF file? Like, take PDF 1.7 file with XFA forms, as we've seen before, in many cases. Is it good or not? So somebody has to tell that XFA might be difficult for the long-term preservation, so you might not want to accept such files. So in the end, what a governmental institution or memory institution is facing, they have to define their own policy. And as Roman was saying, well, go learn the details of PDF specification, go learn gain the knowledge and define your own policy, might also be not achievable for a very clear reason. PDF is a very, very complex technology, and even to develop a standard like PDF-A requires several years of top technology experts. So that's probably still something PDF industry can assist. others, and can help defining good or bad policies, can, well, even take some lead and responsibility in this domain.
Just to add briefly on that, I mean, just to make it clear, XFA, of course, is also prohibited in PDFA, so I was not sure whether that came across. So it's not so that you would do PDFA and in addition have to check for XFA, which is a certain kind of form field, so you don't have to do that. If you're using PDFA, you're already there, so just to make that clear. Sorry, I think.
Yeah, I have a question. So, Matt, I want to bring it back to the start of your talk. When you said, you described a very clear business example and business case for being one of us. So if I limit interoperability, then you need to be in my environment, then you need to stay with me, you need to use my tools and my readers and whatnot, right? So I need your help flipping that. What's the business case for promoting at a player level, at a software provider level? What's the business case for a seller providing full interoperability?
Well, that's a great question. And there are two ways to consider this. You can consider it from the point of view of, you know, how does one convince implementers and businesses that they should open up their environments. And I don't believe that is on its own a question that can have a good answer. How you drive an answer to that is promoting interoperability as a need that users and purchasers understand that they have. So I think that we are, as not just an industry, but as a society, starting to better understand the perils of information lock-in. Companies like Facebook, like Salesforce, other cloud and SaaS providers, I think are doing the PDF community a great future service in demonstrating why you don't want lock-in, why you need to be able to get data out of systems. So driving that value proposition that PDF interoperability allows us as users, as purchasers of software, as people who approve what goes into our companies and what is used, the driving interoperability so that we don't get trapped by our vendors in the future into the silos of their closed spaces. You know, whether that is, and I'll go ahead and name names, whether that is getting trapped in needing to use fruit branded computing equipment, or whether that is getting trapped in needing to have equipment from a company that is named after, you know, has products named after glass makers for an optimal experience, or, you know, equipment that, as long as, you know, I am in an ecosystem named after some sort of robot, everything, it will be great. These companies, I think, and others are doing us the best possible favor and showing that, no, things aren't that great just because you fall into the easy way of going into these closed systems. Yes, they're great when you start, but then when you learn their limitations and when you want to go elsewhere, that is where you start to really get the value of interoperability. And I think other software companies are starting to make the argument for us, and for that, I can only say thank you.
So I will tell
know regarding the HTML, I mean HTML forms. So every one of us using the web every day, and so we know one thing which called forms in the HTML. The thing was in HTML when it grow up, the features grow up in HTML. One thing they left behind was the formatting of the form elements. So they was OS based, and they are still OS based. So let's say upload form is on different OSs looks different. And what they did, the designers, what they did, so to get the design the same on the different OSs, they just replaced the original form with the image of how they wanted to look at the upload form. So what I'm getting is that one of the things, so the basic users of the PDF, not the nerds like us, but I mean really basic users of the PDF would accept it more often, is to get to the point that we will get 3 devices in this room, different, get the same PDF file, and we'll look at this PDF file and it will look the same on all 3 devices. And that is a point which I think the rendering point is really, really important, and it's lacking of the guidelines from and especially from PDF Association, the guidelines how the PDF should look like by default. And extending the features in the PDF files, like 3D viewing or new archiving possibilities, it's cool, it's really great. But the other thing where it's getting us is to the swamp, because we will fulfill a lot of features for a lot of different reasons, but in the same time we are not getting the basics. We cannot represent the data in the same way on a different for different people or on the different devices. So I think that this is one thing to think about, how to guideline the visual representation of the data. So it's not only verification-wise good, but it's also visually good on the different devices.
Thank you. Well, we should probably begin to wrap up here, so
Okay.
Go ahead.
I mean, actually, maybe we can discuss this later on. It's not fully clear to me, because I think it's very well specified in the PDF specification how rendering of stuff should take place. So, and in PDF 2.0, we even have for every annotation there needs to be an appearance inside of the PDF. So I think it's there, but let's touch on that then later on. So, wrap up.
Well. Yeah, if you like, or we could just simply take another question. But if you have if you've been inspired with any thoughts based upon this session, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I would like to add to that what Dietrich said. Actually, I do think it is very well specified. There are tools that community is doing, that we are providing, not the we, but community is providing a lot of PDF sets like Gantt working group, and where you can actually check how specific feature when it comes to rendering should be represented. So you as a developer can actually take this and test your render against it, which is pretty cool. Of course, you might have discrepancies here and there because of lack of support. Like not everybody supports transparency properly or fully, right? And that's again about us as a community to push a lot on those developers, on those big companies. I'm not suggesting that we should, set up a wall of shame or something, but maybe we should. Maybe we should.
And that's my point. That the idea is the guidelines are all right. The ISO standard is perfect. It's all cool. The problem is that the viewers for unknown companies that we all know about is representing it on their own way. So you could look at the same PDF file and it will look different on different vendors' viewers.
I agree.
They're not here and they don't attend ISO meetings either.
Exactly. So again, maybe it's up to you to opt them out from using their tools. You can do that. It's your choice of your customers, and there are plenty of SDKs and tools from companies that are sitting here. They are participating, and they are, evolving their products. So let's use them.
Yeah, I'll probably do a very quick wrap up. A lot of discussions here are about how to share knowledge in the right way, whether it should be some hall of shame or some other methods or just technical information. But it's and this is why PDF Station does a great job. So distributing is information inside members and outside to the external world. And this is, where I believe things are not that bad. And as a result, and thanks to this effort, interoperability in PDF is actually way, way much better in many, many other areas and with many other formats. Yeah.
Maybe let me just add one thing.
Just one short thing. What I think just yet another takeaway for us as a PDF Association, maybe point people to proper test files for rendering. Like there is stuff, as Roman has mentioned, so you have the GWG files, we have the Altona, so just point people to where they can find that.
Right. Agreed.
Interoperability will improve when improved interoperability matters. That's really what it comes down to. We're in the situation we're in because many tool vendors, many viewer vendors out there, their users don't care enough. Interoperability is a problem because interoperability is not a sufficient problem. How will that improve? Well, what can we do? We need to help our users and the companies they work for and the people who they work with to understand and to demand better interoperability, to demand that more people come to the table and that they don't just understand these standards, but they believe in them well enough to put their money behind it, to put their effort behind it, and to do something about it. Without that, we can talk about how technically correct something can be all we want. The broader world doesn't care how technically correct something is. They care that they get the results that they expect consistently and reliably. File format standards are necessary, but they are not sufficient. Having a world of users that cares enough to make this a necessary part of their software, their hardware, and their experiences, that is what we need to drive PDF interoperability.
So that's a vote for the wall of shame, right?
That's what it comes
Whether you call it the wall of shame,
PDF
or
police.
whether you want to start up the PDF police, whether you want to consider a PDF processor certification program, there are many different ways that you can look at it.
You don't have a consumer's reports for PDF.
But
No
maybe
consumer
we should.
reports, no producer reports.
Yeah.
Yeah, hard to know how a membership organization would do that, but that's I think an important thing for us to think about as something that would perhaps advance the industry as a whole. Well, thank you all for participating in this lively discussion about driving interop. And I believe lunch is about to happen. I'm impressed you all have made it this far. I know I barely have. So we return, I guess, at some point. Looks like the schedule updated a little bit. I can't tell. In any event, we return later. There are more sessions late after lunch?
1:30.
1:30. Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you all for your time. Thank you to our panel.